Hey guys, it's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. I try not to do too much autobiographical stuff. Not so much that I'm unwilling to share, it's just that, A, I think it would kind of bore you guys, and B, I myself am not really, B, it would bore me, for the most part. I'm not really interested in talking about myself. But, one thing that I kind of make exceptions for is when I can tie it into something that, that I am interested in and that I like talking about. So this was at least going to start out autobiographical because it's something that, made me think about other stuff. And, so I'm going to start off this video talking about, my experiences with food addiction and obesity. And then, use that to talk about addiction in general, because that is something that I am interested in. I think it ties into some of the other stuff we've talked about here. So, for me, when I was growing up, you can tell by looking at me, I'm very slightly built. I'm a very small build. I have, my wrists are 6.75 inches, which is very small. There's people with smaller wrists, but 6.75 is, it's noticeably small. Like, the thing is, like, let's put it this way, right? I, for all the Heightsberging I do, my height doesn't bother me. I don't, even though I'm short, it's not something I really think about in real life, in normal life. And when I see somebody who's taller than me, I don't, reflexively have this feeling of inferiority. It's really, again, maybe it's hard to believe since I spurg about it so bad, but it's just not that big a deal to me. However, my frame is a big deal to me. And, if you think that I'm skinny and slight now, I was super slight as a kid. So, as a kid, before I was really into all that stuff, like I'm talking about back in grade school, I had like no appetite. There was this time that, my whole family, it was Friday night, so we had pizza because we usually did I don't know if we usually did fast food on Friday nights. I can't remember if it was usually pizza or not back then, because this would have been when I was in 4th grade. And we had pizza. I'm not going to say the name of the place at risk of, legal troubles. Everybody in my family got sick. And except for me, because I ate half a piece and stopped. Because, as a kid, as a 10-year-old, I had no appetite. I barely ate. I liked candy and sweets and stuff, but I probably ate the same amount of sweets as any other kid, when I had access to it. But when it came to actually dinners and stuff, and that's like, it wasn't just like I didn't eat a lot of, the home cooked stuff. See, a lot of kids are like that, but I wouldn't even eat a lot of stuff like pizza. So I had a very small appetite as a kid. Now, by the time I got into middle school, my appetite got a little bit more normal, but it wasn't big by any stretch of the imagination. So, from middle school through at least the, earlyish part of high school, I was frequently trying to gain weight because I was so skinny, and I was into, I had a very naive view of, how weightlifting worked. I figured I lift weights, okay, that's going to do it. Now what I just need to do is to gain weight, and that weight will be muscle. Now, I can see now in hindsight it was idiotic what I was doing. It was really stupid, but I was ultimately actually able to put on quite a bit of weight. I was at I think, I'm trying to remember when it started. There was like sometime when I was a sophomore in high school, I was weighing around somewhere in the low 120s. Sorry, probably about around 120, and that was my natural weight at a height of around 5'8", maybe a little bit taller. And I was lifting weights, but it wasn't actually making me gain any weight or anything, and partially related to the way I was training. The way I was training, again, in hindsight, I can see was not very effective. At least not for somebody who's built like me. And So I went on this diet, this 4,000 calorie a day diet. I was mostly drinking my calories, drinking a lot of these things called instant breakfast. They probably still make them, I don't know, but they're like these chocolate milkshake type things that you can. So I was drinking a ton of those, and I managed in a couple of months to put on about 30 pounds. And like I said, I was lifting at the time. Now, some people told me that I did look a little bit bigger in the chest and the shoulders. My arms didn't get bigger at all, I can tell you that. And although I wasn't doing a lot of direct arm work, and but I definitely got noticeably fatter. But the thing is, for me, that being fat was cool. I was like, I had this gut, but I was proud of it because I was like, yes, I'm not so scrawny anymore. Um, Ultimately though, there was no way for me to sustain eating 4,000 calories a day. So, through a mixture of lack of interest and health problems, I would lose all that. And I would, shrink all the way back down into 124, 125. And this was as a 16-year-old. And actually, I would, occasionally between then and, mid, late 20s, whatever, have times where I tried to put on weight. But for the most part, I always shrink back down. So actually, by my that was as a 16-year-old, I was, like maybe a little under 5'9", and 124 pounds, right? And then by the time that I, graduated college, I'm not even about after college. I'm talking about my mid 20s. I was around 5'9", and I don't know, 126 pounds. So so I gained and so I mean, I just wasn't able to gain weight. And then it was, so this time in my mid 20s, I again tried to put on weight because I was working at a job where I was working at an alarm monitoring company. So I was just sitting in front of like a monitor for 8 hours a night. No, actually, it was more like 12 hours a night with when I was working there. Might have been, I think it was actually an 11-hour shift. But you're just sitting there doing nothing. So I figured, well, I got time. I want to gain weight, so I can use this time to just eat a lot of cheese sandwiches and stuff. So this time, I ate, I was eating like these bologna and cheese sandwiches, and I did, again, around 4,000 calories a day. This time I did put on some weight. So I got I was from 126, went up to around 140. And obviously eating all that cheese caused stomach problems. I had to stop. But this was interesting. This time when I stopped, the weight didn't go away. So I still had this gut, and I've had that gut ever since. It was really weird. It was just it was that something like that could even happen. Just seemed so I had no history because I was so used to the weight just automatically going away, just automatically losing my gut, and it didn't really bother me. I didn't care, but it was just kind of weird. Now of course in hindsight, I would never have done any of these diets. I see how stupid it was to put on to deliberately gain weight. I guess I had always assumed that the thing that was holding me back from putting on muscle was inability to gain weight. So I was always frustrated with my metabolism. I was saying oh, I'm lifting. If I could just gain weight, that would mean I would gain muscle. I never realized that my metabolism wasn't preventing me from gaining muscle. My metabolism was preventing me from gaining fat. So all I was doing by eating more was getting fat. I wasn't adding any type of muscle. When you do add muscle, the weight just comes on normally. The calories are not going to be the bottleneck. Not usually. There may be some exceptions, but it's more think about it like when you're growing. You don't have to try to eat more. You just eat and you naturally grow. Well, with muscles, it's the same way. But when you're growing, you do try to eat more. You're not going to just you're not going to grow bigger. You're not going to get taller and bigger. You're going to grow the same way you would, except with extra fat on top. So, again, hindsight was very stupid. Education comes high, as my grandfather used to say. So anyway, so this, I stayed in the 140 range until, I don't remember, until I started changing up my weight training. Just to start focusing on, instead of heavy weights to failure, lighter weights to not failure. Instead of once a week, more like in the twice a week range, once every 4-day range. When I did that, as in starting my late 20s, all of a sudden the weight started naturally coming on. Now the weight was not mostly muscle. but some of it was, because you can definitely tell that, I filled out. Now, maybe it would have happened anyway. I don't know. But but the thing is, I was just eating my normal diet. Now, in college, sometime in college and later, you remember how I talked about how I had no appetite? That had begun to change. For like normal high quality food, my appetite is still not that great. It's probably the same as anybody else's. Nah, it's probably less actually. But when it comes to junk food, I eat a lot of it. And I was doing this in, up to my 20s and not gaining any weight from it. No big deal. I'm talking about like a lot of fast food, a lot of candy, a lot of soda, and a lot of, whole milk. So anyway, in my late 20s, like I said, I had changed up my weight training program. All of a sudden, I was really putting on weight fast. Some of it was muscle, most of it wasn't. And, I thought this was basically a good thing. I didn't really care about the extra fat because I was so skinny to begin with. And, I was just happy to have some extra muscle finally. Especially because if you see me up into my mid-20s, I think I mentioned this in an earlier video, people who hadn't seen me since high school would look at me and be like, dude, how much, ballface 80-20, how much do you weigh? Because I was just so strikingly scrawny. And, I remember there was one time once that I had been sick, and I hadn't even lost any weight, but I had been sick. And my mom asked me, like, "Oh, you didn't lose too much weight when you were sick, did you?" And it was the same with me because I looked exactly the same as I always did, but I was just that skinny. So for me, gaining the weight wasn't a big deal at first. Now this was the case when you was about around 150 something. Okay, that was so we're talking like over 30 pounds ago is what I'm saying. Now, when I was in the middle of the 150s, I had a calculus tutor who was telling me about his own experience with diabetes and how he had been diagnosed. They said, you're going to go blind probably in a couple months. They wanted to put him on all these medications. So he had died to get out of it. And I just kind of knew when he was telling this story that I had it. And, he brought over some diabetic test strips that he uses to monitor his own. And I tested it, and sure enough, I did. The test came up. It had been 8 hours since I last ate, and it was like in the high 90s. Excuse me. This was in my late 20s. Now, technically, high 90s is actually a little bit ahead of pre-diabetes, but even still, it's too high. That's too high. Your blood sugar needs to be no higher than like 85. I'm talking about your 8-hour delay blood sugar and stuff. This was, like I said, in the 150s. So then, like I said, that was 35 pounds ago. So, I mean, where do you think it is now? It's not good. Like the last time I had it checked, and it was about the same weight that I am now. It was, I think it was like 110 or something. So, it was around 110. This would have been about a year ago, the same weight I am now. And, we're not on the fringe anymore. That's clear pre-diabetes, on the road to diabetes. It was a year ago. I may very well have diabetes by now. Certainly wouldn't be surprised. It's not like I've been eating any better. So, but that, when so from then there's been several times, from that time, even back to when I was in the 150s, there's been several times since then that I've tried to diet. I'm trying to remember. I don't really think any of the times have been because of vanity reasons. With one exception, no, there was one time where my mother confronted me about how much weight I had put on. And I guess it's because, for me it was particularly noticeable because everybody was so used to me being skinny. And I think, she was concerned about it and other people had commented to her about it. And I was just so enraged that I went on a diet just to spite them. And that, I only stayed on that diet for about 18 days. But in that 18 days, I lost 18 pounds. So I started at 178 at the time, got down to 160, and actually stayed there for quite some time without even trying. But that was the only vanity type diet. Other than that, though, my diet was always related to concerns about my diabetes, including one diet that I went on right after I got the phone call from the doctor saying, your blood sugar is at 110, you've got to take off some weight. And you've got to cut down on the junk food and stuff. That diet lasted for, I don't know, a week. I did get the blood sugar down to like down by like 8 points or whatever, but still. Um, the I'm sure it's at least back up to what it was now. So, it got me just thinking about, like, I go on these diets for a while, and then when I start off, and that's the thing is when I'll start off, because every time I go back on this diet is for the same reason. Let me check the time. 15. Every time I go back on this, it takes me 15 minutes to get warmed up usually. I go back on for the same reason, because I'm worried about diabetes. Now, if it was just you're going to get a heart attack in 20 years, I don't give a shit. I really don't care. If it was going to say you're going to get a heart attack in 10 years, I don't care. That when you start talking about losing your feet, losing your teeth, and especially losing your eyesight, that's when I get scared. And but every time I think about it, like I start these diets, and I'm like, this just isn't worth it. I think I'd rather lose my feet or my teeth or my hands. Like, this sucks. And, of course, it's, there's nothing wrong with wanting to eat I was about to say the foods that you like, but it's really the foods that I love. For me, it's not about coping or whatever. It's not about filling some hole in my life. I don't like get depressed and then eat to fill some hole. That's not something that I do. I eat, donuts, fast food. I used to drink, I drink a lot of Gatorade. I consume that stuff because I love it. Because it makes me feel good. It makes me happy. It's not any kind of cope or anything like that. But it's more like, like if you could, as much as I love it, if you could just give me something to stop wanting that stuff, to stop craving it, I would take it for health reasons. But the thing is, it's when I don't have it, when I'm on the diet and I can't have it, that all of a sudden it's all I can think about. And it's like I can't even function because I want it so badly. And, but it's the same thing every single time, right? Because, when I go on these diets, I feel, not only do I feel better, because I do feel a lot better. I don't feel great because first of all, I probably still have diabetes. Second of all, I don't know if it's from my depression or from my medication or whatever. I'm still always going to have, until I get it taken care of, I have, fatigue and problems maintaining a sleep schedule. But I do feel better. I have like less tension. My eczema doesn't bother me, and I can breathe. I can functionally breathe. I have less aches and pains and inflammation. My allergies aren't as bad. My complexion, I just look healthier. And I feel healthier, but also like, tennis, which is, I don't really miss it that much now, but it was at a time, it was something I really loved doing, and I had to give it up because my asthma was too bad. And my asthma clears up enough that I can play tennis or any of these other stuff. So it really, my quality of life in all other ways really goes up when I cut out all these bad foods that I love so much. In addition to the fact that, I need to get this weight off for health reasons. But I'm miserable. Every single time I say the same thing, like, this is not living. This is existing. It's like, like if this is what it takes to keep afloat, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I would rather die in 5 years living on my own terms, getting to eat the stuff that I want, than have to like live this out like this. And just it's nightmarish when I think about it. When I'm on the diet, thinking about like, this is what I'm going to feel like for the rest of my life, because all I can think about is how bad I want a Snickers bar or some Oreos or something. And like, this is for the rest of my life, I'm not going to be able to have one. It's torture. So, but anyway, I think, like in some ways I'm not showing the addiction thing because, like I said, I've several times in this video, it's not some kind of cope. Every time, there's times like where I'm stuffed. Now I'll admit there are times where I'm stuffed and I wish that I was still hungry or didn't feel sick so I could eat more. That's true, but that's only because I like doing it so much. I guess it is kind of I don't know if it's a sugar high or something, but like I said, I'm not doing it to fill a void, so in that sense, it's not like an addiction. And certainly the physical aspect of the addiction, I can get rid of that in like a week or 2 weeks at most. But I think that there's enough ways to call it that this really is an addiction. This is like something that something that I just have to have, something that has power over me, because I've tried multiple times to quit these foods and I haven't been able to. So even though I want to. So I think, the fact that I can't quit anytime I want tells me that it is an addiction. And, it got me thinking, like, why have I been so unsuccessful trying to quit these things? So I started reading a lot about addiction, and, I talked in the other video about meditation, because I was thinking maybe meditation can get me through addiction. So what I was reading actually was this book, I think it was called Dead Drunk, about this guy who was trying to use meditation to get over his alcoholism. And in the book, he'd gone to a lot of these meditation retreats, like really hardcore retreats. I think one retreat he was talking about was so hardcore that the last, you build up meditating an hour sitting and an hour walking. You build up to like 16 or 17 hours a day. Then in the last 4 or 5 days, you do something called a determination, where they pull the bed out of your room so you can't sleep. And you're supposed to go 3 days of doing sitting and walking meditation for 24 hours a day. And you wear a sign over your neck when you go to get so when you have to leave the room to go get your meal, so everybody knows not to talk to this guy because he's on his determination. So this was some hardcore shit. So he said that he was talking about, he's in the forest somewhere in Thailand, and he's meditating, and at one point he's meditating and he just kind of spaces out. And then when he comes to, he's drenched because there had been some monsoon that he hadn't even noticed. And in his lap, there was a snake and a spider that were sleeping next to each other, curled up in his lap. And one of the, this is near the end, so one of the monks said, actually, when you were out there, there was a family of monkeys came by and started staring at you, and this little monkey went and started playing on you while his mother watched. So, assuming this story is true, and I have no reason to deny it, no reason to doubt it, that would be an experience like that. You would think, oh, his alcoholism is cured, right? Nope, no matter how profound that experience was, within a week he was drinking again. Now, eventually he got over his alcoholism after another retreat, but the point is, lots of meditation, lots of retreats, they weren't curing it. The final one did, because I don't even know, but that's not the point. Look, I'm glad he had success, but the point is just simply doing, even what he was talking about, a very hardcore retreat, a month-long retreat that ended with you not even sleeping for 3 days and meditating 24 hours a day. That's as extreme as it gets. That wasn't enough to cure his addiction. And so if meditation can be a tool to help get over addiction, just like I said in the other video, this is just another thing where helpful tool, maybe. Panacea, definitely not. At least not for everybody. Probably not for most people. And, so I was thinking, well, why is that? Why isn't it doing it? And, the conclusion that I made and is that I think that if you put me in a meditation retreat, or that I'm sure that if I was there for a month or however long it was, I would have times where I would have intense cravings for certain foods, because people who go on these retreats do have it. But there's no means to deal with it. There's no means for, unless short of leaving the retreat, there's no way that you're going to get brownies or you're going to get alcohol or whatever it is you're having a craving for. So because of that, it's just kind of it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. You're not dealing with the same level of temptation. So that's a big part of it. But I think there's more to it than that. I think it's because the reason that you're able to get over it, when you're in a retreat, and then you can't resist the addictions anymore when you get out, is because the addictions all feed on one another. And if you're at something like a meditation retreat, you are not just detoxing from the addiction you're trying to get away from, be it your food addiction, your alcoholism, or anything. You are, whether whether you intended it or not, detoxing from all your addictions. So I'm talking about like your addictions to, especially to like, to usually it's like to entertainment or distractions and stuff. Because like when you're in a retreat, you're literally doing nothing, but you can meditate and that's it. There's nothing else to do. So you're either meditating or you're, sitting around and doing nothing. But even daydreaming can almost be kind of an addiction. So you're minimizing your daydreaming, and you're not you're away from all your other addictions. And I've noticed this in my own experience, how my addictions like feed on each other. Like, so if I wanted to like get it, like I think this is why people on I basically, what I'm trying to say is, I think if you want to get rid of an addiction, you kind of have to get rid of them all. I think that's the only way to beat an addiction, because anything else, you're just going to be using pure willpower, and ultimately that will fail you. So, for me, and I've even known this is like one of my triggers to my food addiction. Yeah, look, I love food and stuff. I love the food and stuff, but I normally eat a lot of it when I'm in front of a computer monitor, surfing the web or whatever. And that's another one of my addictions, is internet addiction. So if you said couldn't watch TV, couldn't use the internet, couldn't do whatever, all of a sudden my drive to consume junk food, yes, I would still have cravings, would be much easier to deal with. I would just be like, okay, I've got that craving, let's just put it aside. And then I'm talking about, I have to feel the same way for any other unwholesome addictions that I have. I think it's all connected. So like for me, if and when I do diet again, and I think I'm probably going to have to, at least for the short term, to at least try to buy myself some time, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do what I've done in the past, which is just diet and keep everything else the same. I'm going to cut out everything, like cut out all this addictive stuff. Like I'm not going to use the internet either. And I'm going to do that stuff that I talked about. Like, I'm not going to read fictional literature. I'm not going to read anything that's a distraction for the mind. I'm going to just try to, like what I described it in the last video, is all of those things are anti-meditation. The thing is, I think that a lot of meditation, to get the most effect about meditation, it's not about what you're doing, it's about what you're not doing. I think you will make so much more progress, and again, the disclaimer, I'm not telling anybody to meditate, I'm really not. But I think that if you are trying to make progress in meditation, you will make so much more progress meditating 45 minutes a day, and then not have the rest of the day filled with anything that would stimulate the mind in a negative way, like internet, comic books, fiction books, television, radio and music even, stuff like that. I think that then you will make so much more progress doing that and not doing those things in the other hours than you will meditating 5 hours a day. But in the off time, you're eating junk food and online or reading shit or watching TV or movies or partying or whatever. So so I think that I guess that's what I was trying to say, is that I think addiction, if you're trying to beat addictions, you have to kind of take all of them at the same time, because since it's addiction is ultimately a mental thing. I mean, obviously the physical addiction is its own thing, but I'm not the expert to tell you how to get out of. I'm not the expert to tell you how to any kind of addiction, but I'm certainly not the type to tell you physical addiction is something you want to consult with a professional for sure. You need to consult with a professional about all this stuff, but you know what I mean. Like, you go to maybe like a detox clinic for the physical addiction, depending on what the addiction is. But the other stuff, but when it comes to the mental stuff, I think it's about, you really got to still your mind. So, like I said, that's going to be the next diet I try. I don't know when that'll be. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into complete monk mode. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of temptation. But I'm anxious to see what, my results will be. And then, hopefully I guess I would like to think that I could keep it up for at least 2 months, And it may seem counterintuitive, like, like it's hard enough trying to force yourself to not do one thing, but you're gonna try to now force yourself to not do a million other things, and you're gonna have so much free time to think about it. But I really believe that that's not going to just make it easier, it's going to make it possible. I don't think that I can just willpower my way to even 1 month of dieting. I've never made it before, and I don't think I can. So I'm going to need a different approach. And I can't vouch for this method yet because I haven't tried it, but we'll see what happens. So that's all for now, and I'll see you in the next.